Hello and welcome to episode 85 of the Rollo and Slappy Show. Today is April 2nd, 2018. I am Rollo McFlugel, and with me is Slappy Jones 2, and we are both at McFlugel.com. The show notes page for this episode is McFlugel.com/85, where you'll find links to some of the things we're talking about, as well as links to the things, ways to find us on social media and whatnot, and also to check out our sponsor, LibertyMugs.com, which we rolled out a few weeks ago. We're getting some sales, so be one of the cool people to have a Liberty mug. We were recently featured on the Tom Woods show with his little plug for the listeners' websites mentioned at the end of his episode, since we used his Bluehost link, and so that was pretty neat. He said some pretty cool stuff, had some nice words for us, so check out that episode. It was last Monday, so. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Slappy Jones 2, and he's going to introduce our episode topic.
Hey, thank you, Rollo. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Rollo and Slappy Show today. We're going to dive into the a little bit of this gun control debate. There's been a lot in the news the last month and a half or so, ever since that shooting in Florida. And these kids from Florida are all over the news going to their protests. And they had that march, what was that, last weekend, all over the country, a big one in Washington, D.C. Yeah, they had them in pretty much every city, hashtag enough. And so a couple questions on this is, one, how would a free market handle something like this? And another one is we're starting to see a lot more local news stories, local to us, but local to other cities as well, where the cops are, stopping kids who have a gun or made a threat or made a joke, and they're arresting it and putting out some real scary articles, particularly the one that is local to us here in the Philadelphia area. But I'll pass it back over to you, Rollo, because my mind was wandering as I went through that, so I apologize. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, I'll pass it to you, and we'll get started with this first article. You want to say for the local one?
Sure. So at a local high school, there's a foreign exchange student from Taiwan named An So Sun. He goes by Edward. Has been charged with one count of making terroristic threats after he reportedly told a classmate of his plans, quote, even though he would later admit to saying he was kidding about the act that he threatened to commit on May 1st. So he said, he told another student, quote, hey, don't come to school on May 1st. When the student asked why, Sun is reported to have replied, I'm going to come here armed and shoot up the school. Sun's comments were then followed up with the student with, nah, I'm just joking with you, end quote.
Yeah.
So the first time I read this article, or the first article I read about this story, I read through it and I was like, wow, it looks like they prevented something. But then I read it again, and it was like, wow, they are really one-sided with telling what's going on between the police and the media, really making it seem like what was going on was a lot bigger than it was. Not saying that this kid wasn't going to do it, because I don't know. I'm not in the kid's head. I can't make, a judgment and say, I 100% know that this story is.
We don't know this kid. We don't know what happened. Right. Exactly.
But we know that there have been times in the past where they have really, exaggerated stuff. Like I remember a kid got suspended or expelled from his school from biting a Pop-Tart or something into the shape of a gun.
Right.
Now, we also know with this recent Parkland shooting that they ignored what ended up being some fairly, clear signs, if you ask me, or troubling signs at least. But now it seems like they're just going to go on anything. And the big point here is, was the kid joking or not?
Yeah, and is there any real evidence that he was going to do anything? One thing that annoys me whenever you read these articles from any, this is on the Delco Times or delcotimes.com. But whenever you read these mainstream articles, or really probably any article. Have you ever taken a creative writing class or something? You want to make an emotional attachment to with the reader. You want to get them thinking. You want some emotions going, and they're clearly all over this. As you continue on the article, says a search warrant served on this host family's home turned up a small arsenal of military gear and weapons found in his bedroom, according to Chitwood, who is the police chief. Chitwood. There was a military-style ballistic vest, a web gear to hold clips on a person, cold weather gear, a crossbow with 7 arrows, a loading dock for an AK-47 and AR-15, 20 live 9mm bullets, and a military ski mask, ear protection, and a strangling device. So, all those things, with the language they use, with the words they use, military-style ballistic vest. We were talking about that before we went on. Like, what's a military-style ballistic vest? Is it a vest that stops a bullet?
What's a military ski mask?
I don't know.
Also,
maybe does the military? Is it because it was military issued? I mean, it's a ski mask, right?
right, or I don't know, because it's black, or maybe it's camouflaged, or I don't know why you would want a camouflage ski mask.
Right.
You're probably in the snow, so I don't know. Was it white?
Right.
But, I don't know. I guess it's just
a loading dock. I didn't know what a loading dock for an AK-47 and AR-15 was, so I Googled it, and apparently there's no such thing as a loading dock for an AK-47 and AR-15 unless it's where the truck drops off their AK-47s and AR-15s. So the person who wrote this clearly doesn't know guns. I had to ask around to find out what they were probably referring to, since nobody knows.
Yeah, it's like one of the quick loaders for a magazine.
Yes,
where you just
so
kind of
you load up all the bullets and
you line
slide
them up.
the magazine across and it loads them in.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point in that is really what he has a loading dock, 20 live rounds. They didn't say he has a magazine for an AK-47 or AR-15, which I'm sure they would if they found one. He's got some cold weather gear. I have cold weather gear.
Well, you're probably going to shoot up a school then.
Yeah, and a crossbow with 7 arrows.
Yeah, so let's just be clear. If he were going to go out and go on some sort of rampage, he was prepared with a crossbow. What his weapons were was a crossbow with 7 arrows and his strangling device. So,
well, he could also stay warm if he had to be outside.
Yeah, and I guess he could throw bullets.
Bullets at people. And he could also store them on his loading dock.
Yeah. But what we haven't mentioned yet is that his internet history showed looking up ways to purchase AR-15s.
That's true.
So, what does that tell you?
Clearly, his next step was to shoot up a school.
Obviously. You mentioned it before we went on, and I didn't even think about this, but all we've heard over the last month or two is how easy it is to buy an AR-15. And everyone's saying it's easier to do it than XYZ. It's easier
buy
to do
Tylenol or whatever, or cough syrup.
Or there's some really ridiculous ones. So maybe he went on and said, like, how easy it is to buy an AR-15. Because he was like, wow, like anybody else who would hear an accusation like that or a claim like that and say, oh, let me Google it to see how easy it really is, just out of curiosity. Now, obviously, the kid's into guns.
That's putting him in the best. Yeah, right. And this is putting him in the best possible light. It's just one of many scenarios that could have happened.
Right, exactly.
But of course, they're not saying it like that. They're not saying we don't know what this kid was up to. They're putting it like, here is all the clear evidence that this kid was coming to shoot up the school.
Well, and so Chitwood,
he's a little hysterical about everything.
Just so I can be clear about it, I don't like Chitwood at all. Back a couple years ago, I wrote a couple articles about Joe Piccini, who was the guy with Huntington's disease that threatened to, kill the police if they messed with him. Clearly had mental disorders, and the police went out and killed him. Which, I'm not saying it was like a premeditated murder, by the police, but from everything I could get on the situation, it seemed like they had no problems with setting him up so that it would end up him getting shot. And that was all Chitwood's doing.
Well, Chitwood likes the headlines. He likes the
Yeah.
media. He makes these absurd statements all the time. There was actually shirts going around the town that said, "Not in my town, scumbag." And that was because it was a Chitwood quote. It's just kind of the way he is. He likes to sensationalize things.
Yeah, so I'm going to say he's not a good dude. So here's some quotes from this article about what was going on. Chitwood said this. Anybody that makes any threat to shoot, bomb, or hurt anyone in the school is going to get locked up here. All right, so that's... Now, if it's a credible threat, then yeah, I mean, they should be doing something about it. But here's more of what Chitwood said. He had been cooperating with officials and admitted to them what was alleged, Chitwood said. So this kid also, like when they came in, he apparently admitted to saying everything, but then he was saying it was a joke because his lawyer was saying that his client is shocked by the charges over what was an honest joke. It was a mistake, a joke he made he thought was funny. He understood the hypersensitivity surrounding school violence as of late, but it was a big misunderstanding. He did not fault the student who reported the alleged threat to the school. Now, of course, he could be lying, but, let's not make it so that the way that Chitwood's making it sound like is that they're saying, like, you were planning to shoot up the school. And he said, yep. Not that, like, they're omitting a big part of it, which is frustrating because the frustrating thing for me is that we're not getting a good representation of what this story actually is. We're getting it from the police and the media who want this kid either locked up or thrown out of the country. I guess either way would work for them. So if we want to get down to the bottom of what's going on, hearing it through these people, it's not very good. So here's another quote from Chitwood. When you're able to amass these types of items and you're not even a citizen of the United States, and if you are a citizen and 18 years of age, something's wrong somewhere. Somebody's not watching. What does that mean? So you're not...
Well, the things he amassed, his arsenal was a crossbow and 7 arrows.
Right, and none of it was...
20 bullets.
None of it was illegal.
No guns. He had cold weather gear, which everybody in the Northeast has. He's making it sound way worse than it is. And it worked because... When did this story break? About 5 days ago or so?
Yeah, sometime earlier
last week. I've heard it talked about a lot just in conversation. We was watching the Final Four with some friends. And now this is not from the media. This is from someone else talking. Did you hear about that kid they got? He had these high-powered crossbows. I'm not kidding. That's what they said. I said, what's a high-powered crossbow? I wasn't going to get into it too much with him, but it works. It scares people. People think this kid was ready. Everyone's, whether they read the article or not, maybe they just read a headline, but everyone thinks that this high school was safe from getting shot up 7 times with a crossbow.
Yeah.
Now I don't want the school to get shot up 7 times with a crossbow.
Of course not.
I just don't think I don't really think there's much here. And again, I could be wrong. The guy's attorney, of course, it's his attorney. He's defending him. I mean, but if we're going to look at the cop side, we might as well look at the defense attorney side. He says there was no motive. There's no planning. The kid was not upset. There's nothing here, basically, is what he's saying. And what Rollo just said, when he was questioned, he admitted to everything. Well, the story is that he made a joke. So they probably questioned him, and he said, yes, I said that. Yes, I was joking. I have no problems. Everything here is correct.
Yeah. And it's frustrating, too, is that when they mention Chitwood talking about the family side of the story and everything, and other than the things
I was going to say, did they mention that?
Well, he just said it's an ongoing investigation, so we can't divulge that information.
Exactly.
So it's like...
It could have been, yeah, it's my husband's hunting bow.
Right. So the thing is, we don't know, but they're just painting, so they're keeping a lot of information to themselves, which may or may not be the correct thing to do for this type of investigation. But what they're letting out is clearly meant to make your opinion go one direction.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what happened to innocent before proven guilty? I mean, this
And
kid's
there's nothing in here that gives him any benefit of the doubt or puts his side out there other than what we've read, the quotes. But the way those quotes are framed makes it look bad.
right. So I don't know if you had anything else to say. I want to maybe talk about the Orlando thing too.
No, I mean, the only other thing I want to add to this is why would they do that? And, I think a lot of police officers, a lot of cops, especially Chitwood, there's always, not always, well, yeah, there is. There's always bad press about police officers shooting unarmed people. And they always talk about how, oh, yeah, you were never a cop. You don't know what it's like. You keep telling me how to do my job, You don't know what you would do in that situation, whatever. And so whenever they get a chance to show why they're needed, they're going to do it. And if it's stopping a kid who was harmless, or maybe not harmless, we don't know, but they don't know either, based on the information they put out. They're going to do it, and it's going to make the news, and everyone's going to say, thank you, Upper Darby Police Department. You're so wonderful. You saved all my children.
Yep.
And I think that's the incentive there.
Well, they can sit there and say that, well, I really think we prevented a tragedy, where you can make that up about anybody doing anything and just say, oh, my actions just prevented. It's an unfalsifiable claim. So
it just seems like I don't want to say, I don't blame them, I guess, for investigating or looking into it. But This should have been on like page 6 in a bottom line, like kid was questioned and released, or kid was questioned and held. We have no evidence he did anything. But it's front page and it's military style and it's an arsenal and it's, they make this out. They put the words AK-47 and AR-15, even though he doesn't have one or any parts of one. They make it worse than it is and put it on the front page just to show how wonderful they are. And if there was any honest reporting, it would have been, if it made the paper at all, it would have been buried and not a big story. We stopped a kid who made a stupid joke. Hey, kids, don't joke about killing your classmates when we've had school shootings recently. And that's the end of it. But it's sensationalized and it's headlines, and he has his press conference with his pictures of the crossbow and some vests. That's literally what the picture is. It looks like a backpack. I am sure that's the military style ballistic vest and a crossbow.
Yeah, I guess anything that's not a clear backpack now is military style.
Exactly. That's all I wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I agree, because and in case we didn't say it enough times, but we're not saying that we know that this kid didn't have bad intentions, but it's frustrating hearing how the police and the media go about doing it.
How they paint the picture and how everybody buys it. Nobody questions it.
Right. Talk
to anyone around here about it, and they're saying how this kid's crazy and you got to be on the lookout. And if you see something, say something. And, it's not, in that sense, it's not good news. Right.
So this other I was in Orlando for work this past week, and I was sitting at a restaurant, and a news story, it was on the TV, local news was on the TV, and a thing caught my eye. And it was at the University of Central Florida, UCF, where another exchange student from, this one from from China, is being deported from the country because, again, they say that he was displaying certain behavior that would lead them to believe that he was going to shoot the school up. And so this kid had previously bought an LWRC 300 blackout rifle, and he had ammunition for it, which he kept at a public storage facility because firearms are not allowed on campus. And he had apparently told the school that before. They knew about it. But apparently he started acting weird. He gained some weight, changed his hair color, stayed in his room a lot. And then also apparently bought a car with $70,000 in cash.
Right.
I wish I could do that. But
yeah, same.
So they called the police on him. The police came and questioned him, and they had he committed no crimes yet. They determined that the gun was bought legally since he already had a hunting license, and that was allowed on a student visa like that. So they couldn't do anything. But they asked him anyway if they could take his gun from him for quote unquote safekeeping, and he said no, which is smart on his part because he would, what are the chances of him ever getting that back?
Why would he? It's his right.
Right. He didn't do anything wrong. There's no reason, no obligation to turn it over. I mean, it's just, it would be like me walking up to him and say, hey, can I have your gun? And he says no. Is he now suddenly suspicious? More suspicious? So after that, he bought another gun. And then at that point, the police were saying that, like, all right, we need to get him. So apparently they found a loophole in his visa where, since he hadn't been attending classes, that they say that was grounds to terminate his visa. And so they deported him. So they arrested him with the ATF and ICE were there. And they arrested him for, now I can't find where they actually have the charges. Oh, here it is. Violation of his terms of admission into the country and potential firearm violations.
Potential, meaning what?
So they did not arrest him until they found out he bought the second gun. And it's very clear with the way that Police Chief Richard Beery talks about it, where he was like, we needed something. We wanted to get the guns out of him. We wanted to take him down. But we didn't have the legal authority. So thank goodness that the feds came in and gave us a reason to be able to arrest him. So, the potential firearms violation. So he might have committed a crime. That's enough to. So outside of that, okay, I guess technically you could, if he's violating his visa, I guess you could arrest him. But bringing ICE and the ATF to do that seems a little bit over the top. And also, so I don't know if you sound like you were going to say something. I was going to bring up another kind of point.
Well, I was just going to say, what's a potential firearm? I mean, potential firearm violation, does that mean owning a gun? Because I guess you could potentially modify it some way that's illegal.
Right. Well, they say, everything was legal. They made They made a point in this article to say that, despite calling again with the high-powered firearm and military-style rifle, they made a point to say that the guns were legal. He didn't do anything illegal. So, if he were, maybe he was skipping classes because of had the other issues he was apparently dealing with. It was the, disturbing behavior. What if he didn't own any guns, or they didn't know he had any guns? How differently would they have treated him? Would they have maybe tried to get him some counseling to figure out what, if anything, was going wrong with him? The fact that he owns guns, that means, and he's going through some sort of issues, that means he's going to shoot up a school.
Right.
Again, we don't know what's in this kid's head. We don't know what he was going to do next, but I don't think that having him get arrested by the ATF and ICE like that and deported back to his country, probably traumatized through that. I don't imagine that's a very pleasant experience. I don't think someone who's mentally or emotionally not doing well, I don't think that's a good medicine for him.
Probably not.
So, and again,
this
police chief is patting himself on the back. In my mind, something very bad was going to happen somewhere in Central Florida, he said. I think a disaster was about to happen, and we stopped it.
Yeah, in my mind, if it's a crime, I can do what I want. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's tough because it's all the emotional thing, and they paint it in a certain way. They said military style, and they say it's high-powered firearm, and blah 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 blah. But what does that mean? It doesn't. There has to be a better way of figuring out who these threats are and what's a real threat and what's just something that, hey, it's someone who just owns guns and is having a bad day or having a bad time, Mm-hmm. So Because that's the other thing. We bring this stuff up, and I know, and people say it all the time. Oh, what's your solution? Just do nothing? Is that what you're saying? Is that because we don't think that the police are doing a very good job with handling situations like this, that we should just wait till someone starts shooting a school up, just because we don't want to violate anyone's rights, and until they're actually committing
until the
act of
bullet is
murder,
actually
yeah.
fired. Yeah.
So what do we do?
Well, first of all, if we were I think this is. I mean, this could be an entire 5 podcast question, because without the state, are you saying without the state existing, what will we do, or what's a better way to handle it now?
Well, I think it's tough. I think
how
we would do it without the state does, because it's really tough right now to do it, because there's so many people there's so much that has to go into it. You have to change so many minds and get people out of the paradigm of thinking that the government and the police are there to protect them and are going to serve them even well. So, I mean, I don't know.
The state's only tool is the hammer.
Right?
It's throw you in jail. That's all they can do. That's their threat, and that's what they can do. And that's why the war on drugs doesn't work. I mean, even if we take the premise that using whatever drugs the state decides are bad, is actually bad and bad for society, why would the solution be to lock people up for it? It just doesn't make sense. You think you'd try to get these people help if they need it at all. But and again, I'm working from their premise that these drugs are in fact all bad. Mm-hmm. Why would your solution be throw them in a cage? Same with a guy who's having mental issues and owns a gun. Why is the only solution throw them in a cage? Ruin their life forever. Just spiral them down into more depression. It just doesn't seem like a good solution. Even if you are a statist and you think the state needs to intervene, why would that be the answer?
Right. Can you imagine trying to, coming out of your prison sentence and trying to get a job or just live your life and having that
exactly
terroristic threats for shooting a school up or hanging over you? Right.
And on top of that, people are trying to have common sense gun laws where people with mental issues shouldn't be allowed to buy guns. How do you define mental issues? I saw an article, and I don't remember what state it is, but people who have a is it a prescription or a license for medical marijuana aren't allowed to buy guns. I forget what state I saw that or where that was. So how do you define it? And who should have a gun and who shouldn't? Or who should be able to purchase a gun and who shouldn't? The person who's suffering depression goes and gets help, is medicated, is doing well, sees a doctor, talks it out, he's stable, has a job, feeds his family, or the guy who has the same issues but never gets any help and never does anything.
Right.
Because by your rule that people with mental issues cannot buy a gun, the second guy is going to legally buy a gun, and the first guy who's taking care of himself is not going to be able to buy one.
Right. Yeah,
so
it's not a good feedback loop for.
Yeah, the solutions from the state just don't work and won't work and can't work.
And for situations where they're trying to investigate and figure out what's going on, when you have the state do it, I don't see any way of not violating someone's rights by doing it. Whereas if you had a market approach, then
let's talk about that a little bit.
It's all about private property. So first of all, especially for the case of the high school, because it wasn't a public school this happened at, it was a private school. If they want to throw this kid out, they're obviously within their rights of doing that. So that's obviously one, maybe not a full solution to the problem, but that's obviously within their rights to do. Whether they're right or wrong to do it, that's another story, but that's not violating anyone's rights. But but that doesn't really answer the question, though, because getting kicked out of the school doesn't prevent him from coming back, loaded to the teeth. So what would be a better way to deal with situations like this where someone says something and you've got to determine whether or not, in maybe one case if he's joking or another one if his I hate using their terms, but like the stockpile of weapons
Yeah.
represents a threat or not, or if that's just what he's decided to do.
Or why his stockpile is wrong to have.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I mean,
You know.
most gun owners I know don't have like 3 bullets on hand.
Well, this guy had 20, and they called that a stockpile.
I know, with no gun to shoot it with.
With no gun, no anything other than a crossbow and the stockpile was a crossbow and 7 arrows and 29mm rounds.
He was gonna fight dragons somewhere.
Cold weather gear. In the cold. He was going up to the mountains to find the dragons.
But okay, so I know one thing we talk about all the time is kind of the free market regulator, if you will, is insurance. And I think this is another good example of where insurance would be a much better solution to having, the government's police and courts deal with this situation. So how would that work? We have, in a free market in, libertarian land and Ancapistan, most people would be, instead of having the police, protect rights and everything, you would have some sort of like insurance where you would get.
This is a theory, obviously.
Right.
We don't know this is what would happen. It's just an idea of what could happen.
But you would have, your rights protection through an insurance company. And so they have an incentive to make sure that you're not going to be a liability to them. You're not going to have to be a situation where they have to make a payout on a claim. And if that involves you, killing a bunch of people or shooting and injuring a bunch of people, that would be a major claim they would have to pay.
It's a huge risk, yeah.
And they don't want that at all. So what would happen, Slappy, if I have a policy with insurance company XYZ, and they found out that I'm at school and I made this kind of apparently a joke. What I am claiming was a joke to someone else.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure they'd look into it because, again, that's a liability on them.
Mm-hmm.
Insurance companies, while they do pay claims, they don't enjoy paying them. They like to. I shouldn't say that. They do because it's good PR, but they have their actuaries and they have their risk, their loss ratios, and they know how much they can pay out based on how much premium they charge, and they try to put you in a pool of similar risk. And so, if you're buying guns, you're probably riskier to shoot someone than someone who doesn't own a gun. That may come with a higher premium. It may not. It may come with a lower premium. Maybe there's classes that would be offered to keep your premium down, to show that you're certified, that you understand how to operate a gun, that you respect the gun culture and respect the gun. Because I know in my own personal experience, the people I know who own guns and are in that, the hunters and the people who, you would say gun people. I feel very safe around.
Right.
I don't feel at risk at all with them. They respect the weapon. They know how to use it. Even their kids understand.
Well, it was like when we shot the clay pigeons,
mm-hmm.
and literally everyone's walking around with shotguns and a lot of ammo.
This is actually a really cool place. There was like all these stations, and you go around and
an old quarry.
Yeah, in an old quarry. There's old buildings there, and the clays fly out and you shoot them.
At no point did I ever feel like, oh man, I'm a little nervous. I might get shot with all these guns around.
Yeah, real shotguns and a ton of people there, all with a gun. And people walk, I don't know the right term, but you crack the gun, put it over your shoulder as you walk from station to station, and everybody did it.
Yeah.
And if you didn't, someone would be screaming at you to do it because you don't walk around without the gun cracked.
Right.
But if that's the right terminology, I don't know. But anyway, back to your question. So let's say this is the case where it's someone's son in school making threats. Of course, we could go into the deeper question: will we still have schooling the way it is in a stateless society?
That's the other thing. I mean, that's how you just go on a side. there's a lot of things that are just problems because the state exists and has certain institutions and structures the way it is now. You would eliminate so much of that if you eliminate the state, and we wouldn't even be having a lot of these problems. But
Exactly. That's why I said it could be like, you could actually have an entire podcast on this episode,
right,
on this topic.
and really, I mean, with resources freed up from not having taxes, everyone would have tractors and would just be so preoccupied with them that they wouldn't care about anything else.
My son said tractors are slow.
Well, they're strong though.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, so whether schools in the way we know them today even exist in a stateless society is a question to itself.
But so let's not even use schools as an
So
example.
we'll just
someone
whatever.
who looks like a threat, who looks
say
like
he's going to shoot up a movie theater,
right.
And we're going to say the scenario is like this one where he was talking to a friend and the friend reported him. My guess is the insurance company would look into it and investigate it, and if they find it credible at all, he would probably need to talk to a psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever, make sure he's taking care of himself. They'd probably have a tighter watch on him. Maybe premiums would go way up until he gets rid of his weapons, or who knows how they would handle it. I don't know.
But they would have an interest in knowing kind of if you're gonna. It's like when you buy a life insurance or disability insurance policy, they don't just give it to you randomly. They learn a lot about you.
Right.
They have a nurse come to your house a lot of times and take your blood pressure, take your weight, draw some blood from you.
They get your medical records. They do what they call an MIB check, which is the
which is fairly. I don't want to call it intrusive, but they get a lot of personal information about you. But it's a voluntary transaction.
It's really hard to hide anything from the insurance company. Put it that way.
Why would it be any different for this kind of insurance, for making sure that you're not going to go out and shoot someone, or that they're not going to have to send their agents out there to get in a shootout with people because you started it. That's not what they want to be there for. That's very costly. It's not beneficial to them. So they would do research on, or not research, but learn about you and be able to do some actuarial number crunching a lot better than just, guy like Chitwood who's just out to, make pomp and circumstance about himself.
Well, yeah, the example I used before we went on was, say you applied for disability insurance or life insurance and your blood pressure was high and you don't know it's high or you didn't realize it was high, and you get your offer from the insurance company and they say, we're going to issue you standard rates instead of preferred because you have high blood pressure. And you're thinking, no, I don't. I've never had high blood pressure. No one's ever told me this. What are you talking about? The insurance company oftentimes will say, okay, if you don't, then prove it. Go at your own expense. Go get your blood pressure taken from a doctor or from pharmacy usually can take your blood pressure. Send us the report. If it's good, we'll give you the preferred rates. If it's not good, then it's going to be standard. And why is that important? Is because they'll give you an opportunity to prove that you're a good risk. And so in a case like this, it's like, all right, we found your kid making threats. Prove to me he's not a risk, and we'll continue to cover you.
Right. And they have to find a happy medium because they don't want people to run from their, maybe losing one client isn't that big of a deal to the insurance company itself, although to the insurance agent who's making a commission off it, maybe it might be, it's a bigger deal to him. But there's all these incentives to make sure that there's a happy medium met, that you're, one, taking the serious threats and credible threats seriously, and then you're also making sure that people are protected.
Well, it's not an insurance company's interest to take on bad risks because they'll be paying out more claims than they are taking in premium, and they'll go out of business. Mm-hmm. So they can't take on too many bad risks. There are impaired risk carriers and different types of products that are geared toward people with different health issues.
And I would have to imagine if they do cut someone loose because they do feel like that this guy's actually a serious threat. One, well, I mean, it might be built into your contract that if you become some sort of threat, that they will take you in or something, or protect you from. I don't know.
Yes.
But also, if they just say jettisoned you or said like, "Hey, we're not covering you for this kind of stuff," it's not in any insurance company's interest for anyone to have to pay out for something like that. So I would have to imagine that they would alert the other insurance companies that operate in the area to be like, "Yo, look out for this guy. Keep an eye out for him, because we're not comfortable with what's going on here." So,
well, that's why I mentioned the MIB in the underwriting. It's a medical information bureau, which is privately run, and it's voluntary completely. And just about any life insurance company, respectable one anyway, like A-rated. All the ones I know participate in it. I know it's not required. And so whenever you apply for insurance, you get an MIB record. And so let's say you applied and you said you were a non-smoker, and then you did your paramed exam and they found nicotine in your urine. It would go to the MIB as having a nicotine hit. So they issue you smoker rates and you decline it. You say, I don't want the policy because you're trying to cheat the insurance company by not being honest and saying you don't smoke when you do. So you decline that policy and go to another company and try to do it there. And in your head, you're like, all right, well, this one caught me. I'll just move on to the next one. Well, every time you apply, you get an MIB record. So every company will see that you've been applying for insurance everywhere, and they'll see that your code will pop up that it says nicotine. So they'll know, okay, well, 2 weeks ago you just took a test and you were positive for nicotine. Now you're telling me you're non-smoker. And this is not a law. This is a voluntary organization that insurance companies participate in. And I have a feeling something like that could happen, where just a general liability policy that we're talking about, if there was reports for this kid in whatever area to be threatening, it would probably alert people in that area or the insurance companies in that area. And then they can handle that how they want to handle that.
right. And even outside of insurance, just from where I work in an oil refinery, where if we're bringing on a new vendor to do work for us, we want references from other companies. And normally the vendor's very eager to give those references because they want, the proof from other people out there to make sure that, it's a good product or a good service. And, companies don't say like, oh no, we're going to keep this from everybody else because we only want to be the ones to use them. No, they want, because it's implicit that if you let other people know about good things that this company has done, they're going to let you know about other companies that have done well for them. So, it happens naturally everywhere.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, everybody has an interest in not having kids kill other kids.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that.
Believe it or not. So that's about everything I had to say about this. I don't know if you had anything else.
Yeah, I think we said enough.
Yeah, we're kind of going a little bit long. So I wanted to bring up a free market success story because I realized after I released last week's episode that I forgot to add one at the end. I was so interested in making sure I got the tractor thing in at the end of the show. I forgot about the free market success story. But I mentioned earlier I was on a trip to Orlando, and what I thought was pretty neat was I got a rental car when I was down there, and the rental car that I got, the company that I used, did not have like one of the booths at the airport. They were a mile or two away, and so what they offered a shuttle service for free. Well, built into the price, but it was a little bit cheaper than the. Well, that's the reason I chose that one. It was cheaper than the other ones. But they offered a free shuttle service to and from the airport. So that made it like very convenient. Are they doing it just because they're nice people? No, they're doing it because that's how they have to get business. If you had to go pay a taxi or an Uber or bus and deal with that hassle to get from the airport to the rental car, place, then I'm sure people are going to be less willing to do it. And I'm sure that there are a bunch of them. There's all sorts of rental car services outside of the airport, a mile or two away. So they're all competing with each other, and they got to make themselves as attractive as they can. So I'm sure, like, once the first company did that, then everyone else kind of had to follow suit to keep up with them. So it was just a nice little thing, and it worked really smoothly. I had no issues at all with it.
Well, you see that around airports often, where you mentioned car rental, but also parking lots. Mm-hmm. You can park in an off-site lot and get a shuttle to the airport. Hotels will often do that as well. Sometimes travel for work, and you call the hotel when you get there, and they send. And some of them aren't even that close to the airport, but they'll send a shuttle for free to pick you up and bring you to their hotel. Mm-hmm. So
they even do stuff where you just hand the hotel. I didn't use it, but if you've got a checked baggage, you just give the hotel your baggage.
How about that?
And you just go to the airport yourself, and the baggage shows up at your baggage claim at your final destination. So
nice.
They services like that where it's dealing directly with making someone happy, and because a lot of times when you're either on vacation or traveling for work, especially if a lot of times you're not used to going to someplace, it's a different place, so you're dealing with new surroundings.
Well, they want everything to be easy, stress-free. Right. You don't have to worry about it. They'll take care of it.
Exactly. So it was a nice little story. It's just a nice little wrinkle in the trip that's just something else to just appreciate that happens, and because we have a somewhat of a market system. So it's a nice little thing to bring up. So with that, again, the show notes page for this episode is mcflugel.com/85. You'll find links to the two articles we were talking about today, the one about the UCF student as well as the one from the Philadelphia area high school student. And I also wrote an article about the Orlando thing, so I put a link to there too. Also links to find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the like. And also check out libertymugs.com. And if you sign up to our email newsletter on mcflugel.com, we will give you a discount for purchasing mugs on Liberty Mugs. So get your mug there. We've had some satisfied customers already, so go on Twitter, hang out with the Liberty Mugs Twitter handle, and you'll have some fun. There's been a lot of people promoting this, and we want to give a special shout out to...
Let's return the favor,
I want to give a special shout out to Melissa at NotMeg.
M3G.
She's been... Well, she wanted me to get rid of my my profile picture for my Twitter account.
Which was your actual picture. That was your class photo.
Yeah. So now she's using it for... The agreement was if she got 2 people to buy mugs from us, she would use my picture for a week, and I would have to take it down forever, which I did. I honored it. So
check out the Friends Against Government podcast.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we were. Well, that'll be linked on the show notes page too. And we were guests for this Wednesday's Friends Against Government podcast episode. So be sure to check that out. We had a lot of fun with those guys, and it was quite an honor to be on the #1 libertarian podcast out there.
It's true.
So that was pretty nice. I mentioned where Tom Woods gave us a shout out. That was great, but he's only #7, so the real thrill is coming Wednesday.
That's right.
So, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Peace.